Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This is the place where you get both a coach's and sports dietitian perspective on topics important in endurance sports, including nutrition, training, and how these impact and fit into your daily life both on and off the race course. Your host, Coach Justin, certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian with a specialty in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins. Welcome, everyone, to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. I'm here with Coach Katie. Today, this is episode 30 of our podcast, and we are going to be talking about autoimmune disease, and with a specific one that we're looking at is going to be Hashimoto's. And so I'm going to just do a brief introduction, and I'm going to leave the bulk of the intro to Coach Katie. So let's get a couple of our housekeeping things out of the way. So we have our Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group on Facebook, which is a private group that is dedicated to the podcast. And we are trying to grow a community of endurance athletes where we all learn and support from each other. You'll see eventually additional content as we start to build this community out. You'll see additional content coming from us and the podcast. So go ahead and check that out on Facebook. Log in, just search for the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group on Facebook. Answer just a simple question and we'll let you right on in and we'll grow this community. If you are interested in coaching, both Coach Katie and I are taking on athletes on our rosters. So if you're looking for nutrition or run coaching and you would like to reach out to Coach Katie, you can reach her at fuel2 and run.com. Or if you're looking for running and multi-sport training and you want to talk to me, you can go to tabularasaracing.com and send me a message. Mm-hmm. I can't think of, do we have any other, bonus casts? So we've been pushing out some additional content throughout the weeks. This is these are my videos that I was producing, or that I am currently producing for my Ironman Florida 70.3 prep. So each week I produce a video where I talk about how my training went for the previous week. We talked about it and we wanted to produce and push this out onto the podcast as well as bonus episodes. So it will not be replacing our normal content that is coming out, but we're almost caught up to where we're now in sync and in line with where I'm at in my training, but I've been releasing a couple episodes each week. But you can look for an additional episode on Tuesdays because we normally release our normal content on Thursday. So on Tuesday, you'll see a bonus cast from us. And this is kind of like this is an experiment. So we're kind of see on, if you're interested in some of these insights on our training and our racing and what we're doing on our own, like personal journey. So, I don't know if it's public, so I'm not going to release any kind of information from Coach Katie yet.
No,
but
if she wants to share, I signed up for the grandma's marathons. I was kind of debating on whether I wanted to do the half or the full, but the half literally filled up within minutes, maybe, because my friend, it was I think they opened it up at 6 p.m. and I got on a call with her and it was 7, and she's like, "It's already full. The half is already full." So I'm like, well, I don't, I could do a charity or something, but I'm just I guess that's my sign to just go ahead and sign up for the full. So I will be doing that. That's June, I don't remember the exact date, but June 20th of next year. So I'll be ramping up my training. I'm kind of right now finishing up a 5K kind of training cycle, and then I'll be going to base phase, and then I'll be kind of ramping up my training and starting the training for that maybe more around March. So if you're interested in something similar to what Justin is doing, but for that, I'm definitely considering it. So if you have any feedback or you like that format, we would love to hear from you about it, because I'm probably going to then do my own kind of weekly updates when I start that. So sometime in March, likely.
Yeah. So go ahead and check out some of the past episodes of this bonus cast and boost those numbers up so we can see that you really like the content. Or if you like the content that we're producing in general for the podcast, go to wherever you are listening to your episodes, whether that be on Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Podcast and leave us a review. You can leave up to 5 stars and leave a comment to give us some context. We would appreciate it. I also want to tout our YouTube channel as well. So if you're listening to this podcast on one of your podcast platforms and you would like to see the episode of us talking together, then you can go to our YouTube channel at the Endurance Athlete Journey. Is it the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast? I think that's what it is on YouTube, but you can look up the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast on YouTube. Check out our channel that's there. And all of our episodes are streaming right there where you can watch us talk. So, all right. So I think that's all the housekeeping that we've got, and probably most of the introduction that I'm going to do. So I'm going to actually turn this conversation over more to Coach Katie, and she's going to talk about what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, it's basically my journey with Hashimoto's. So I don't know. I've shared it a little bit maybe on Instagram. It's not something I'm out there being like, I have this, most people, I mean, I guess there are some people out there that do really share, if they have a specific condition or something, but I'm not out there usually like, hey, I've got this. Because for me, I mean, I have a whole story with it, and I think it's worth sharing because I think other people might be able to identify with it. But it hasn't really been something that's slowed me down incredibly, or something that I've had some struggles with it. But as you can see, I'm still running and I'm still performing and I'm still able to do even marathon training. And so I think I think that perspective will be good for people to hear. And I'll kind of dive into a little more, but I think because there's so much on the internet and sort of this, you have Hashimoto's, you're supposed to kind of have certain symptoms or feel a certain way, or there's something that people kind of make it sound like, you're going to be gaining all this weight or you're going to have all these issues. And I don't think that's always the case. I think that if you approach it a certain way, perhaps, you can still be training for marathons, and you can, and everybody's different. So that's also what I want to emphasize here, is that I think the biggest thing I've learned just with myself, and then hearing other people's experiences, and kind of, and even just throughout all these years of doing my own research and my own digging into it, I just figure everybody's kind of got their own experience with it. And so whatever anybody else is experiencing is also not going to be exactly what you're going to experience with it too. So even my story, like, it probably is different than another person's experience. And so I think it's just worth sharing because there are probably certain people out there who have it. I do want to kind of maybe start with just a brief explanation of what what that is, because if you have never heard of it, it's a very funny, kind of weird. You're like, Hashimoto's, it's a kind of a weird name, I suppose. But essentially,
let's pause for just 1 second. So I want to make sure that we cover ourselves here.
Right. Yeah, we can start with that.
We are talking about an autoimmune disease and its role within training and nutrition. What this does not constitute is a patient medical provider relationship. We are not offering medical advice on how to manage autoimmune diseases. We are not qualified. That is not our wheelhouse. And so this should not be construed as a medical-driven podcast episode where we're offering suggestions on how to manage your autoimmune disease.
Absolutely. So, we're not an endocrinologist.
If you do have an autoimmune disease and you are interested in training and nutrition, then we suggest that you reach out to your primary care physician or whoever it is that's managing your particular issue. And then once you get that advice and then you want to come to us for training, and you bring whatever your doctor has told you, we are more than happy to build that into whatever plan that we would come up with, but we are not medical providers.
Yeah, we can't manage your medication or, I think also it's important to kind of check maybe with your provider and let them know maybe you're already training if you're listening to this, but that you're, engaging these activities and kind of get their perspective and advice and anything that they would be concerned about also, so you kind of have them there, because what I can provide is some guidance with fueling and nutrition that might be tailored a little bit to your autoimmune disease and what you've tried in the past. And then also with the training, I take that in perspective. And so I might be, as a provider, that I'm not providing too much training too hard, because there might be more susceptibility to something like overtraining, or there might be more susceptibility to the training actually kind of making the symptoms worse. So that's just something we might work on, but it's not. We're not going to be here saying like this is how you manage, this is how you cure or something, because there's
Right.
unfortunately no cure for it. And yeah, that's not what we're doing today. I'm kind of talking from my perspective, mostly my own journey, but we might bring in some things related to training or nutrition, and that's probably the extent of it. So we won't be talking about managing with your medication, exogenous hormones like thyroid hormones or anything like that, because that's definitely out of our wheelhouse. But I did also want to talk about it really quickly, just a brief overview of what Hashimoto's is, and then we can kind of dive into my journey. So Hashimoto's essentially it's an autoimmune disease, and so the body is attacking the thyroid gland. And so usually what that means is the thyroid gland isn't really able to produce enough thyroid hormone. So many people who have Hashimoto's will have to take some sort of exogenous thyroid hormone, not always. So it's very individual, and there are so many different types of treatments out there. So then we're not going to talk about that, but that's just essentially kind of a very, very like broad, very unspecific, like undetailed overview of it. But it's essentially the body, just like almost every other autoimmune disease, the body is attacking an organ or a system of some sort, and it's the body sort of unfortunately turning against itself. And that's the case with Hashimoto's. And with Hashimoto's, a lot of times it is very common in women. I didn't look up the statistics, but there is, I have before, and it is more common in women, although it does happen in men. I think thyroid stuff in general kind of happens more commonly in women, and it happens to be more common as we age. And then also, there isn't a lot of research in this particular autoimmune disease, particularly because I think, and I'm kind of speculating here, that it's because it's predominantly women, and then also because it's easily treatable in a way. Like you just take the hormone, as your hormone levels decline, you then get treated. And so it's easy to treat. It's not generally something that's going to cause someone to, like it's once you get the hormones exogenously, you can treat it. Like most people do pretty good with it. It's not like you have 5 years to live or some kind of very serious disease. It's less serious in that way. But I do want to mention that a lot of times when people have one autoimmune disease, they have risks for others. And so that's always something to keep in mind. And the other thing that's interesting just about autoimmune diseases in general is that there is a couple factors that can influence them, and that's genetics and environment. So I'll talk about my experience and kind of what I speculate, because I don't know for sure what kind of caused it. But I personally have a cousin who has Hashimoto's, and my family members that have celiac disease. So those are both, celiac is also an autoimmune disease. So I do think there is autoimmune diseases in my family. And so likely that's a piece of my puzzle. And then generally I don't know if you've ever heard, Justin, this saying, but it's essentially that and this is it's just a weird saying, but it kind of makes sense. So genetics loads the gun, but the environment or our lifestyle pulls the trigger. So sometimes we might have genetics for something like the genes, and this is also kind of known as epigenetics. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of genetics, but if you have something for, like something like Hashimoto's, like you might not necessarily get it. You can have the gene for it. You might not necessarily actually get the disease. But potentially, if you would get the disease, if something in the environment or something that happened or something like an environmental factor kind of almost activated it, like, okay, now this gene is sort of, and this is very broad, I'm kind of speaking in a way that makes sense. So I'm sure there's more scientific words I could use, but essentially like the environment kind of like turns that gene on, and now you have this disease. And so that's kind of what sometimes happens. And sometimes it's maybe just always been there. Like with type 1 diabetes, it's common for little babies and little kids to get that very early in life. And so it's not always so simple, right? Sometimes it's not. It is just, there's lots of things, and we don't know. The thing is I want to mention here is we don't always know. So when you get diagnosed, or, in my case, when I got diagnosed, it's a lot of like, what was the trigger for this? Why did I get this? And so I think a lot of people can spend a lot of time speculating, but in most cases, we'll never really know because there's no test to say, like, hey, this is what did it. This is how you got it. Like, or maybe I always had it. It's just something I did might have like exacerbated it. So it's really hard to know because you wouldn't know until you started having symptoms usually. Or maybe you went to the doctor and had a thyroid panel done and your thyroid, the hormones were off or something was off, or you did they call it TPO antibody test where they test the antibodies, which is what's essentially kind of the response to the body attacking the thyroid. So anyways, yeah, any thoughts there? I'm going to dive into my story, but that's just sort of a good little overview of some things just to keep in mind, and pretty common with many autoimmune diseases. But yeah, any
I guess the
thoughts?
question that I would have is that you said that it's more common in women, and I can say that I've worked with one athlete who also had Hashimoto's, and so it was something that I had never had to encounter before as a professional. So I'm not quite sure what this athlete had to manage compared to like what you had to manage, because we're all different and it all behaves in a different way. But when you say environment triggers the recessive nature, so it may be a recessive
Yeah, I'm not
disease that's in there, and then
yeah,
all of a sudden it gets
not sure
switched
how
on
it,
by something.
yeah, I'm not
But
sure how
if
that
it's more
process.
common in women, would you say that pregnancy would be a
Yeah, that's
valid
interesting.
trigger
Yeah, it
for
could
that
be
kind
because a
of
lot of women
switch?
do have it develop after pregnancy. And you know what is interesting is it's like, I think it's hard. And again, this is where it's hard to know for sure. Is there something, is it the depleting nature? I mean, like as great as having kids is, like they deplete women a lot of nutrients. Is it the stress on the body that, because it is very common for women to have that diagnosis post pregnancy. I hear that a lot with women who are, and just kind of their experiences of when they finally get diagnosed with it. And a lot of times it's like, oh, it's after I had my first kid. That was kind of true for my cousin. Maybe it was after she'd had her two kids. So it's oftentimes that could be some, but then again, we don't know for sure because there isn't
Right.
a lot of research in it, but that's generally very common. And usually it can be after a period of stress, or, in some people, potentially it could be, triggered by something in their diet. And maybe, we don't know too. It could be something, forever chemicals. I mean, we just, this is where I
Right.
think it gets frustrating for people because there are a lot of, this is what I get frustrated with. And I have a lot of people who come to me and they're like, I don't know what to do. I've tried all these elimination diets, I've tried all these supplements, and it doesn't always seem to be helpful. And, or I've been told that this is what triggered it, or there are just a lot of people out there who, and unfortunately, I think this is true for a lot of diseases that we don't always have all the answers to. There are going to be people out there that want to take advantage of that, or they kind of see that as an opportunity because people want answers. So it's very easy to go on Instagram or something like that and find someone that says, hey, like, just read my book on Hashimoto's or just follow my protocol and you'll figure out your trigger and you'll be, and you'll feel great and you're going to, maybe even not have the disease anymore. I mean, people like to kind of claim that they can cure things. And so I think, unfortunately, that when we have a disease that doesn't have a lot of answers and it's hard to say what might have caused it, and there can be a lot of people out there that are like, okay, I'm going to kind of capitalize on this because I'm going to capitalize on people's wanting desire to know the answers and desire to
Right.
have a, fix, right? And so I do wanna mention that. I think that particular thing is what frustrated me the most because I know I spent a lot of time, I even read books that, people put out there on Hashimoto's kinda claiming like, "Oh, I have a protocol, for this." And I think for me, it was more harmful than helpful because it left me feeling overwhelmed. I'm like, "Well, I have to, like, this is telling me I have to take out all of these foods. I have to, like, basically be on this autoimmune paleo protocol, and then I'm adding all these supplements and I'm doing all of these things." And it's like, wow, this is very overwhelming. And it's like, is this really going to get me the answer I'm looking for? And unfortunately, after trying certain things like doing food intolerance testing, which is arguably not actually that helpful or even accurate, And I went down so many paths. I went and I actually saw another dietitian that does work with Hashimoto's, and she gave me all these supplements, which was kind of a little bit off-putting to me because it was like, I don't know, or like, I'm obviously buying these from you, So it's like, are you making a
Yeah.
lot of money off of supplements from me? Like, and I'm like trying all these things, and I really don't feel as though any of that actually helped me get to the bottom of it or made a difference for me personally. Maybe there are certain things within that helped me get to some sort of answer. So I can't claim that it wasn't helpful at all. But I feel like I went through down a lot of rabbit holes and didn't really end up anywhere better because of it. And so I just want to kind of put that out there that I get the frustration because like I've been there before,
Right.
and I can't claim to say that, I have all the answers. When I work with people, it's more just try to be like almost like a detective and get down to the bottom of like, well, what have you tried that's made you feel really good? Or what have you done? Because many people have come to me already tried protocols and different things with their Hashimoto's. And so it's just kind of almost asking all those questions of like, what have you tried? What's made you feel better? What's made you feel worse? What do we know with the research? What are the maybe few supplements we know might actually be helpful because it's not 500 of them, or whatever, like a huge, like supplement regimen of like 50 supplements a day, So what do we know? What do we do? What do we know? What's your personal experience? And then kind of trying to help people navigate it. But it's tough because and the other thing is nobody, like I mentioned at the beginning, like nobody's trigger for it is the same. Nobody's experience with it is the same. Like maybe there are similarities, but it's challenging. And so I think what I want to tell people is, I get why you would want to go on and try to find the answer, but it may not be be very weary of who you're coming across online. Because if somebody is claiming that it's all inflammation and you have to follow this protocol or this is your trigger, or you have to like go through this whole very intense process and it's stressful and you have to eliminate all these foods and, maybe there is a place for elimination, but that might not be the answer. And anyone that claims they know exactly what you need to do and exactly what you're going through, I would be very cautious with that because I just don't think that's the case. I don't believe that anybody can know exactly what you need to do or that there's one protocol that's going to help everyone. So
Mhm.
that's just what I want to put out there. I do think maybe people are curious, like they maybe want to know my story. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to kind of because we talk about the genetics. I already mentioned that, and then we have the trigger, the environment piece, right, or the pulling of the trigger, the environmental piece. So for me, I don't know for sure. I may have had it prior, but my experience does involve running and it does involve what I suspect is overtraining, although I never got diagnosed with anything like overtraining. So I was in graduate school. It was and this is also a piece of the puzzle. So obviously it was a bit stressful. I was working on my master's thesis. It was my second year of graduate school and I was training for a marathon. So at the time, so to go back a little bit, when I was in college, I was on a team who kind of believed this is the philosophy, at least what I picked up as the philosophy of this coach when I was at CU Boulder was you got to train hard every day. Like whoever is
Mhm.
left standing at the end is the ones that go to, the big meets at the end of the year, cross country nationals and things like that. So if you could just suffer through the whole season and at least if you're not injured and you're doing okay still, like you get to go because there's like so many athletes that would get injured and people that were just burnt out of running. And, so that is what I picked up from that program. I don't know. I feel like other people who've been on the program that I was in have a better experience, but it was kind of like I felt like there was no talk about having easy days or how important recovery was. It was like just kind of this expectation that you would go hard. And then on the days we were supposed to go easy, the girls would push it hard anyway. So it was just like grained in my head, you got to push it hard all of the time. Like recovery is not what we do, right? So I get into
Yeah.
graduate school and I'm like, I'm going to train for this. I had in the back of my mind at the time, I think the standard for the Olympic trials was a lot more lenient for women. It might have been like 247 or 248. And so I was like, okay, I want to try to hit that I want to try to get this time for the marathon. I think I had ran close to like a 3 hour, 2:59. I can't remember the time frame, but it was like I had been close to 3. And I'm like, if I just train a little bit more like a elite, I think I'll be able to get there. So I'm in graduate school trying to work on my thesis and training like 80 miles a week, literally
Wow.
training for this marathon. And not only that, I was probably in zone 3 a lot of days and doing hard workouts. I was never actually allowing myself to be in that kind of recovery zone. That's a lot of running and a lot of running at, fairly hard intensities. And then also because I was walking to campus, I was walking a lot. So there's that. And then I was also eating, but I think because I was so busy with my graduate studies, if I can remember correctly, it wasn't like I was intentionally under eating. It was just more I was busy. And so I do
Yeah.
feel like there's probably sometimes I wasn't eating enough and not intentionally because at the time I knew the importance. I was in school for nutrition, right? So you would think, of course, I would know and I would, you know, try to prioritize that. But then there would be times I remember being in the statistics lab trying to figure out my statistics for my thesis. And it was like, I thought I would only be there like a couple hours. I was there for like 5 hours, and I didn't eat, right? Because I didn't
Right.
think I was going to be there. Things like that would come up. And so I remember specifically, like I'm probably putting myself into a hole. And I wish I had more tools back then, like training peaks, like heart rate monitors that I just think I was old school. I was like, I'm just gonna, and I wasn't paying attention to how I was feeling and I wasn't taking enough recovery. And then I got to this workout probably like 3 weeks out where I was like, I have to do these like 8 by 8 repeats on the track. And I'm pushing myself and I'm like, I just feel awful. And I made myself do all of them because I'm type A. And I was like, I just don't feel good. And at the end, I could barely, like, I was like limping home. I think supposed to do like a cool down. And I just like walked home because I was like, I'm like crushed. Like I was done. And I remember that workout being like, that was so hard. It shouldn't have been so hard. And having to walk home and then just being like, basically unable to function the rest of the day. And I honestly think looking back, like I can remember that workout pretty vividly. Like that's probably the point at which I might have pushed it to the end. Like, I don't know, it's probably just a progressive thing of like weeks and, days and weeks of training and not taking enough recovery. But that may have been the very point at which it was too much. My body was like, you pushed me too far. And I remember like, okay, now I'm into this. It was like, maybe I still had 2 or 3 weeks before the marathon. I did know how to taper, luckily, but at that point it was too late. And I remember being in my taper time and I'm like, I don't feel good, but typically you don't. But it never
Right.
got better. I just felt like terrible for 2 weeks. Like never, like just like my body. When I remember I think I did have a heart rate monitor, maybe. I don't know. But I remember like being like, there's something wrong. My heart rate's higher. Like something's kind of weird. I don't know why. I don't feel good. I'm sleeping all night. I'm waking up, but I'm going on these easy runs to like in my taper and I'm not feeling better. And I get to the race. It was the CIM, the California International Marathon. I think it was back in 2012, 2011, maybe. Anyways, it's like I can't remember the exact date, but it was like, yeah, I was still in graduate school, so it had to be like maybe 2010. So it was a while ago. So I did it. I did race it, but it was like very apparent to me in the very beginning of the race that I wasn't feeling that good. And by mile 18, I didn't go through the half at all where I wanted to be. And by mile 18, I was unable to continue. I was like limping or I was like not, my body was done. And so I did walk a portion of that race and probably the only time I've walked so much in a race my entire life. I did finish it somehow. I was determined to finish it. It just was at least 3 miles of walking, I think. If I can remember, it was a lot
Yeah.
of like walk, run, jog, trying to just get to the end. I got finished and I was just so exhausted. I remember the next day I couldn't even walk. Like I was trying to get to the airport and I was like, I think I might need like a wheelchair. I don't think I can. Like, I'm like, that's so weird. I didn't even run the whole thing. And should have been in shape enough to at least been able to, I would be, most of the time when I do marathons, I'm sore, but I'm able to get around. I might be like funny down the stairs and, hanging onto railings and things like that. But this was like legitimately concerning. Like, I don't even know how I got myself into the airport the next day. and walk around. I must have looked incredibly funny or something was wrong, because I remember being like, I really am like in a lot of pain. And so I'm like, okay, that was awful. Like it was a really bad experience, the marathon. And I had to really kind of look internally and be like, what happened? I think, obviously I overdid it, but I took several weeks off because I just I was burnt out. And when I started running again, my heart rate, I was at a 9-minute mile. My heart rate, I guess I did have a heart rate monitor because I remember this. It was like 180, like a 9, like it jumped up I'm serious. I was like, oh my God, I'm like gasping for air. I'm like, what? Like my heart feels like it's coming out of my chest. I'm like trying to just do an easy jog and it's 180. I'm like, I don't know, there's something wrong with the heart rate monitor. I don't know. So I go home, I try again the next day, same thing. And then after like a week of this, I'm finally like, something's wrong with me. I need to go to the doctor. So I don't remember it may have been 1 or 2 weeks of trying to run. And even in my daily day-to-day tasks, it was just seemed like my heart was kind of like pop, like coming out of my chest almost. And I did lose, which I probably didn't need to lose because was already pretty thin. I lost like 5 pounds in a couple weeks. So I go to the doctor and he's like, I think you might have like, it's kind of weird. Your heart rate is really elevated. I think you might have Graves' disease, which is another thyroid condition. But he's like, we're going to run all of these tests. Like, so we did all of these. I mean, I'm so grateful because some doctors, I don't know if they would have done, they might have put me on like a beta blocker and just been like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know. Like maybe the fact the heart rate was so high was concerning and he wanted to make sure he was thorough. But he did a whole thyroid panel, including the antibodies for like Graves, and we did throw on Hashimoto antibodies. Just, I guess he was thinking like this isn't typically how Hashimoto's works, but because typically people come in with their thyroid. So I could talk a little bit about what was going on, but typically people come in and they're like hypothyroid. Well, what happened here was I was hyper, so my thyroid was just shoving a bunch of thyroid hormones out more than it needed to. Like I was wired but tired. Like I remember during this time frame I was not sleeping well, and because I was like my eyes were like maybe they were bulging. I don't know. That's more of a Graves thing, but I remember just being like I can't sleep. Like I'm kind of wired, but then being like exhausted all the time. It was like such a weird, terrible experience. I don't know what to explain. It's like I'm laughing now, but it was like just, you're like, what's going on with me, and you're like, oh no, I like did something to myself, right? Like I've caused this. And yeah, I got the results back and he's like, well, your TPO antibodies were like 1,000 or something really high. They were very, very high. Normally, I think they're like supposed to be below 50. And my thyroid hormone, I was extremely hyper. And he's like, well, there's not much. He's like, but you have Hashimoto. So eventually you're probably going to go hypo. Like your thyroid will probably, right now it's in this overactive state. So whatever I did to it, and my speculation is that I did too much. I overtrained. It caused an extreme amount of stress on my body. And it like maybe triggered this autoimmune disease. And it actually caused it to like like the body was just in this attack mode and was just like overly like going after the thyroid maybe and like pushing out a ton of thyroid hormone at the moment. But so that's kind of what I was speculating was happening because typically, and this is just an interesting thing about the thyroid panel, is that when you go in, they look at TSH. TSH is how they decide if it's hyper or hypo. And it's low TSH, so low, usually below 1 or 0.5. I don't know the exact, I'd have to look at the exact like reference range is actually hyper. But when your TSH is above like typically maybe 4 or 5, it's hypo. And that's because the TSH is actually coming from the pituitary gland to stimulate the thyroid. So when your TSH is low, it means that your body's not wanting to stimulate the thyroid. Like you already have enough thyroid hormone. And when that particular value is starting to creep up and up and up, it's usually because there's not enough thyroid hormone and the body's trying to like stimulate the thyroid to make more. So that value is kind of always confusing because you would think it would be the opposite. Like, oh, if it was low, it would mean your thyroid was low, or you had a hypo, but it's the opposite. Anyway, so I get this and he's like, there's not much that you can do at this point. You just kind of have to write it out. I could give you beta blockers, which would be like to slow down the heart, but he's like, you're gonna really struggle running. Like it's like beta blockers, if you want to go out and do exercise, you're gonna feel terrible And he's like, I would just suggest you kind of lay low a little bit, don't get back into serious exercise for a while. Just kind of we'll see where your heart rate goes and where things go. And so I did take a series of several months off and then started to feel a bit better and kind of was like, okay, I can start training a little bit more. So I did so this was in the fall. So CIM is December. And I do think I started training in the spring a little bit for a triathlon because I was on the CSU triathlon team. And we did go to, I think, Alabama or somewhere like that for the triathlon nationals that they have. And I did do it. I just didn't do very well. It was very hard for me to kind of get back into intense training. And I was able to get back into triathlon. I was able to participate in that race. So I don't know if I truly had you can weigh in on this too if you know anything, Justin, about like overtraining. But from my understanding of it, overtraining usually can sometimes take years to come back from, and or like people may never be able to participate sometimes in the sport again, or they can't at the level they used to. And obviously several years later now, I'm participating back doing hard workouts and kind of almost able to do it similar to, I don't overtrain anymore. I'm very careful about that, but I don't know. So it's questionable whether I actually had overtrained, but I was able to come back and participate and eventually, kind of get back into running. And so I kind of forgot about it. I was like, oh, I guess I have this Hashimoto's, but I don't know. Does it seem to be affecting me anymore? I guess I don't. Maybe I still have it. Maybe I don't. I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it because I feel okay. And then it was sometime after I got through my internship for my dietetic internship in Houston, and I think I was back, and it was around 2012 or 2013, maybe 2014. I started to get very tired. Like I was, I'm so sleepy. It's so hard for me to get out of bed, just kind of like I'm sleeping a lot, but I'm so tired. And that's a common symptom for people who have it.
Yeah.
It's like that. Gosh, I'm just like, I feel like I should be well rested. I feel like I should get up. I did sleep. Like, why am I so tired still? That kind of thing. And I would like drag myself to the gym or whatever to try to do a workout, and just kind of was like so tired. And so I decided, oh, well, I better go back and like test this again. Like I need to maybe look in to see what's going on. And sure enough, it was then at that point, I don't remember what my TSH was, but it had gone up to like maybe 3.5 or 4. So it wasn't like over the range, but she decided based off my symptoms to start me on a low dose of a medication called levothyroxine. And that's what I've been on ever since. So it's the same dose. I mean, I'm happy to share my dose, but this is not the same dose as everyone else. It's just like a low dose,
Right.
like 25 microgram dose that I've been on for years now. But she put me on that. I felt better. And so but then after that experience, that's kind of when I started to go down that rabbit hole of like, oh man, how do I cure this? Right? Like how do I get rid of this? I don't want to have to take a medication. I've changed my mind a little bit about medication, but at the time I'm like, I don't want to be on medications. It's like, means I'm sick, that means something's wrong with me. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to have something wrong with me. And so that's kind of when I started down like reading books and trying to eliminate things and trying to, I did at some point around that time or maybe a few years later, go see that dietitian who worked in Hashimoto's, and she did an MRT, food sensitivity test, which I did do some elimination from that. But honestly, with all the elimination stuff that I have tried, the only thing I can actually identify food-wise was that ever caused me any issues was eggs. But it's always been an obvious one. So what I want to tell people is that generally, if you're doing some sort of food elimination, if you don't experience an improvement in your symptoms or something isn't extremely obvious, that food is probably not necessarily causing you a problem. Because for me, eggs is bam, they hit my stomach. 2 hours later, I'm in a fetal position. My whole day is ruined. It's like
Okay.
I'm in so much pain, and now it's even progressed to throat vomiting. I'll throw up. It's bad. So it's not like a slight thing. It's this is obvious. And I do think when I have eggs, because when I eliminate them and I don't eat anything with eggs for long periods of time, I don't have any inflammatory symptoms. What I mean by that is any joint pain. So I do think there's other things that it's causing obvious inflammation in my gut, but I also think there's other down the road symptoms that kind of it can exacerbate. So I've taken out that one very obvious thing, which was, because obviously, why would you eat them if they cause that much discomfort, right? And because my son, I do want to mention this too, because my son has celiac disease, I've essentially completely eliminated gluten. Can say for certainty I don't know if it's helping. I don't know because I didn't notice any like profound improvement when I went gluten free. It wasn't like, oh, now I have like boundless amounts of energy or like, and that was more of a recent thing. But because of that and some of like 2 supplements that I take, and I would prefer people not do what I'm doing. So if you want to work and figure this out, I do think kind of reaching out because you personally may or may not need this, but I did take a few things that I think might be helpful for Hashimoto's, and I have been able to bring my TPO antibodies down from 800 to 1,000 down to maybe 300. It's still high, but I'll take it. You know what I mean? And I've been
Right.
on this low dose levo for like for a while, so I feel pretty good. Like I'm not. There are days that I'm tired. Just like I have a 6-year-old child. I run. I'm active. Like I work. Like obviously there are going to be days that I'm a little bit tired, but I think there's a lot of things that like I do that maybe would resonate with other people too. That with the running especially. I think sleep, for me is very important. So I make sure to sleep. And I mean, I'm kind of in my early 40s, so perimenopause is around the corner. So sometimes I have sleepless nights, but for the most part, I do sleep and I prioritize it. It's like I don't want to compromise on that because it's for me, that's a big, big piece of this is stress. And that's kind of like, so anything that when I'm overstressed or I don't sleep well, it kind of brings, I think, exacerbates my Hashimoto's or my symptoms. And so I do sleep and I obviously really focus now on nourishment and making sure I'm eating enough for the training, making sure I'm prioritizing my fueling around my workouts, to make sure I eat enough protein. Like, there's a lot of just basic things that I think anybody with Hashimoto's could be really focusing on. And that would be sleep, just an overall healthy, like, enough protein, fiber, enough veggies, fruits and veggies, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory foods in general. Like those are all basic things that people could do that I don't think would be I could sit here and say would be helpful for most. So those are all things I try to do for the most part. And so my experience with it is that yes, I did get tired, but haven't had that like sort of debilitating experience that some people have with Hashimoto's where they're like totally unable to function and get out of bed. So I can't say that I've been in that situation. I think for me, a lot of it is just mental too. Like I got to a certain point where I was like, this is like, I have this, but I'm not going to let this be what defines me. I'm not going to be like, hey, I have Hashimoto's. I can't, like, because you'll hear people out there saying, like, you can't do vigorous exercise if you have Hashimoto's. Okay. Like, I'm not going to, no, I'm not going to let that slow me down. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that's the way I approached it was, no, like, I have this maybe, but I am not letting it, like, it's not going to get to me. I'm not, because I don't know because everything like mental piece is half the battle. If you believe you're okay and you're mentally like, I mean, obviously if you haven't treated it and you're still really like hypo or something like that, you're probably gonna have symptoms. But I've been able to get to a point where my levels are all good too. So I'm in a good place there. And I'm obviously taking care of myself with nutrition and all of that and sleep. But I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, well, they told me this one doctor online or, maybe doctor or maybe just somebody who thinks they know what they're talking about online said I shouldn't be doing vigorous exercise. I can't do marathon training with Hashimoto's because it's going to cause, I'm going to get a flare or something. And my experience is not that, and I've been defiant. Like, no, I'm not going to let that slow me down. Like I want to do that. I want this, I want to come back and run the marathon and I want to do well with running. And so maybe it's just me being like a defiant, like mentally, like this isn't going to get me kind of mentality. I don't know. Cause I can't explain. I think mental is a big piece, but I can't tell people, oh, just think your way out of it, just be positive, that's not going to be
Yeah.
helpful either. But I mean, I think because I've been very careful at this point about recovery and with my training, I think that's a big piece with the Hashimoto's is really listening to your body and having your levels checked, when you're in the midst of a training cycle, making sure you are looking at your levels, like, your thyroid levels and making sure you are nourishing your body with enough because I think really for a lot of people, it's the stress. And for me, that was what it was. The stress of the overtraining may have been the trigger, that extreme amount of stress I was putting on my body with grad school training, not maybe potentially eating enough, and then getting to that marathon and trying to push myself through that was probably just, I think, I speculate, sort of the thing that really pushed me over the edge, and that's how I got the Hashimoto's, or that's at least how it became exacerbated. So now I can't do that again. I can't just train day in and day out hard, right? So it's just being very cautious about those easy days being easy, and I mean very easy, and then my hard days are very hard, but I also make sure I'm sleeping okay and recovering and all of those important things. So I think that's possibly why I'm able to do it, even though I have the disease and I've been essentially, some people may tell me that it's like going to make it worse. So far, I'm doing okay. So far I'm running and I just trained for like 3 marathons in the last year and feel like they all went pretty well. Like I don't, and my symptoms are, I feel generally pretty good most days. So yeah, that's my, I don't know. I mean, I think I captured most of the story, but that's, yeah, I guess, there's nothing remarkable. I didn't end up in the hospital or totally on my deathbed or anything, but I have it, that I'm managing it with my running. And I think people need to hear that sometimes, that like, as long as you're cautious, you can still do what you want to do. You don't have to let whatever is going on exactly define you. Obviously, you can't do something if it's going to potentially lead to your death or, I don't know, like, I can't think of a disease offhand, that maybe a heart disease of some sort would probably, there's certain things probably where running is definitely not indicated in that. But
Mm-hmm.
for this particular thing, autoimmune, I don't know. I think people like to, oh, well, you're going to trigger another autoimmune disease, and I don't know. Maybe I potentially, but at least I'm here doing what I want to do and doing what I love. And so I guess if that happens, because I wouldn't know either way, would it be the marathon that's training, or is it just inevitable that's going to happen? It's hard to know what's the future and I don't know. So I'm just going to do what I'm just going to continue just doing me, being me and training and loving the process. And so we'll see what happens.
You can't live your life with a maybe.
Right.
So it's, that's to me, that's not living at all. So, maybe this is going to happen. If this happens, well, I mean, that's not for certain. And I think you've proved the situation to where you can manage it effectively and still be a high performer. It's not like you said, well, I'm never going to be able to perform anymore because of this issue that I have to manage. So I'm just going to settle for participating. And I
Right.
think that's a really important point to bring out, is that, you can still effectively manage these cases and still perform to the best of your ability and still be a high performer and not just settle for just a participation. When I was working with the one athlete that had this, I can say that we're not working together anymore. So, my experience I didn't completely understand Hashimoto, so I own that. This athlete did sleep a lot.
Mhm.
And so I was trying to figure out, I was like, okay, how do I effectively manage this athlete's training and still keep it at a level that allows the athlete to recover and still get in the volume that's needed, because we were training for a full Ironman. And so we're talking a lot
Oh,
of
wow.
volume.
Yeah, that's a
And
lot.
so, the athlete had tried to do an Ironman before in the previous year under a different coach, and something happened during the race where where the athlete couldn't finish. Okay, I've already said she, so here, she couldn't finish, and so we started talking, and she's like, "Just give me a run plan. I kind of want to take a break from multi-sports. Just give me a run plan." So I produced a run plan for her, and she performed really, really well and loved it. And so then we started. She's like, "Okay, well, now I kind of want to try another full Ironman, so I want you to coach me." And so I was like, "Great, let's do this." And so I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I work with her and give her the necessary volume that she needs, all at the same time of trying to manage the situation. And there was a case during the training where they were manipulating the dosage of the thyroid meds
Mhm.
that she was on. And so one thing that I do want to say is that I do regret not communicating more
With her.
with her. And because this type of athlete requires, I think, more communication than kind of like just like your, I don't want to call like standard or quote unquote normal athlete, because what's normal? But I think this situation requires more attention, more due diligence. And so if you're self-coached or you are being coached and this is a situation that you're under, communication is going to be even more paramount to the effectiveness of your training. And so I do wish that we had communicated more, because it got to the point where it's like she just like abruptly just stopped, and she's just like, I'm changing focus. I'm no longer doing the Ironman. I'm dropping out of multi-sports altogether.
Oh, wow.
Like canceled Training Peaks, canceled her swim membership, and just
Oh,
like
no. Okay.
disappeared.
Well,
And I'm trying not to own that decision as her coach and say, hey, did I push and drive her to this instance where she just was done and
right.
just tired because I couldn't effectively manage the stress of training. And she had a very busy life outside of training as well. And so when you're trying to put all these pieces together,
Yeah,
it's
that's true.
hard. And that one really kind of hit
Mhm.
me pretty hard for a
I don't know.
while
Yeah, I don't know if that's your fault,
afterwards.
because I think that's the biggest thing for me though is I say that I can train and stuff now, but the reason I'm able to do that is because, especially the last year, is because I'm not currently working full time. I have a flexible schedule, so I was able to kind of manage my schedule with my own business and the things I was doing to be able to accommodate training and not be overdoing it. So I do think that's it. I do want to kind of say here that if somebody has Hashimoto's, because there's just more need to maybe sleep and have the time, like at least dedicated 8 or 9 hours of
Mm.
in bed sleep time, like
Yep.
if not more, like you do need quite a bit. So there's that takes up time. You can't with Hashimoto's. I firmly believe it's not going to work well for you if you think I'm going to go to bed at 10 and wake up at 4 or 5 to train. Like you're going to that's going to lead to some problems. I know you said she slept a lot, but then also if you have like kids and a full-time job, like unfortunately, I think somebody with Hashimoto's, because there's more need for that recovery, it may be very hard for them to manage a very like a marathon schedule, or particularly probably a whole Ironman type of training schedule, and be able to manage, because we have to remember, like, there's stress from all these different things. The training does have stress with it. So does having kids. I don't know if she had kids, but having kids plus having a job, even if your job is fun or you like it, there's still stress because you have to get to work. You have to do the work. I mean, there's a like low level of at least some low level stress, right? So there's all
Mhm.
these things. And with Hashimoto's, it's kind of one of those things, at least in my experience, where you maybe cannot handle the same amount of inputs of stress inputs as somebody without Hashimoto's. So I think in that I do want to mention that when I'm kind of saying it's mental, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do this training that I'm doing if I had to be at work at 8 to like a full 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 schedule. I would be able to run, but there's no way I'd be able to do marathon training and the type of training that I would need to be able to be like sort of doing the times that I want to do, right? So like, but some people can, people can if because they don't maybe necessarily. I'm not saying it's always good that the stress isn't going to be a problem for somebody who doesn't have a Hashimoto's. I think with Hashimoto's, it's still our ability to handle lots of stress isn't as great. And I could
Mhm.
probably say that all across the board for most people. I mean, I don't know. There are maybe people out there that that's not their experience when they have it, but for most people. So perhaps with her, it was just too much, you know, because if she was working and who knows what other things she had on her plate. It just might have been too
Yeah.
much, and she might have realized that. And unfortunately, she didn't like explain it to you, like, "Hey, this is me." It was more like, "I'm done with this." And so I don't know. I'm just saying I don't know for sure, but I kind of wonder if she kind of was like, this is maybe came to her own realization of like, wow, I'm overdoing it a little bit. I can't. But it's too bad she kind of totally instead of being like, I don't want to, maybe like, oh, I could do it. Instead of that, it would be nice if she'd been like, oh, I could do still like Olympic distance or something. Like, why? Sometimes I wonder,
Yeah.
like, why
I think some of it
am
is
I?
she was torn between like doing multisport and then doing kind of like CrossFit kind of stuff because she really enjoyed. I mean, triathlon can be a very lonely and isolating sport
Can be,
if
yeah.
you let it.
Yeah.
She was very sociable. She loved the interaction of like kind of like class type environments. And so she really fell in love with CrossFit and, just enjoyed that feedback.
Mhm.
As her coach, I was trying to, I don't want to say convince, but I was trying to make sure that she was fully aware. It's like, okay, CrossFit is great. I completely value focused and purposeful strength training. Whether CrossFit fits
Right.
into the plan for doing an Ironman, whether it gives you the specificity that you really need to make it worth the investment of time, that remains to be seen.
Right.
But I kept it in her plan because I knew that she enjoyed it and that, it added to her life. But I don't know if she just got to the point where she's just like, I'm not really digging this Ironman training.
As much. But yeah, maybe it was just
I'm
like,
gonna
hey, I
focus
kind of like
on
this CrossFit
CrossFit.
stuff. Yeah.
But
But with
I will
CrossFit
say, like,
too, it's not
yeah,
like your traditional strength training. You have to remember
right,
this. Like, I did CrossFit for a while, and a lot of the workouts are very high intensity. And it's like maybe 10, 20 minutes of very high intensity, but they're like lifting weights very quickly. It's not like a traditional rest in between sets kind of situation. So I would say for someone with Hashimoto's, it could be a great workout, but it also can be a little bit stressful because of the amount, of work you're putting in that short period of time. It's just like a real high
yeah.
there's a lot of intensity. And so if you're doing intensity plus like volume and intensity other places, try to fit all of that into a plan, that's, I think, challenging for sure. Like I was doing it and I was training for, I think, some shorter races at the time, and then I did a little bit of CrossFit while I was training for my 50 miler, but that's all I was doing, and I was actually experimenting a bit with doing that and doing less volume to see if I could still do well. And I think my experiment, I can't say it went well for me, but I can't say that I recommend CrossFit for everyone for that reason. I love to experiment. So I was just curious, like, oh, if I do these high intensity workouts plus some low volume running, like, how is that going to end up? How am I going to do? I just wonder if that's what happened. She just kind of like, okay, recognizing that she was just doing too much and she had to pick between two
Yeah.
things, and and it had probably nothing to do with you. But I know it is as a coach or whatever. That happens to me when I'm working in nutrition, like with someone in their nutrition, and they're kind of like, going a different way or whatever. I'm like, what did I do? What did I
Yeah.
do wrong? Or it's probably just that it wasn't the right fit, or they decided to pursue something else and it wasn't really me, but it's hard. And
So
anyway,
when
at
you
any rate.
have when you have Hashimoto's,
Oh,
how do we manage volume and intensity when we have this particular situation that we have to manage, whether it be Hashimoto's or whether it be any other kind of autoimmune disease? How do you remain flexible
right.
in following a plan, whether that be if you're coached and your coach produces a plan for you versus just following kind of like a cookie cutter chat GPT kind of plan.
Yeah.
how how do you effectively manage the situation? How do you
That's a
manage your
good
training?
question. I think for me, it's kind of like having had the experiences I've had. Like, I really know myself well now because I pushed myself to an extreme that obviously wasn't good. And so I know what that feels like. So I feel like, unfortunately for me, it's just because I can know. I kind of feel like I have a very good understanding of when I'm just overreaching and when it's getting to the point where I need to really pull back because I've had
Hmm.
pushed myself so hard, but most people haven't been there. So I do think it is like, unfortunately for someone with Hashimoto's, and if they want to train, they might have to, and they want to try to train themselves. I think they're going to have to really pay attention, I think, to things like sleep. How are they sleeping? Sleep quality. If that becomes disturbed, maybe that's a sign that they're doing too much. If they're waking up, HRV scores, heart rate. I think during training, if their heart rate starts to, maybe the levels start to change, like they're doing something and they're like, oh, this is weird. My heart rate's either oddly low or oddly really elevated. during training, for specific paces when they're used to it being at a certain zone, and all of a sudden it's way different than or slightly different even than they're used to. It could be a sign, so I think unfortunately, like I do when I'm into intense training, I do spend a lot of time thinking and sort of looking at those sorts of aspects of it. So I'm not, in addition to my own subjective feeling of, okay, it seems like I'm really tired today. Maybe I need to back off a little bit. So I think there might be a level of having to do more of that so that you're not putting yourself in that place and really paying attention to your body. And I think for someone with Hashimoto's, you do not want to do a bunch of fasted workouts. It's probably the worst thing you could do because it's so stressful
Mm,
on the body. You're going to have to eat before you run. Like you're not going to be able to do a whole lot of that type of training. Low carb diets of any sort are probably are just generally for an athlete not a good idea if you have Hashimoto's, in my opinion, for women especially. So trying to do some sort of like, I'm going to do low carb and train is probably going to be one of the absolute worst things that you could do. So I think, yeah, fueling is going to become a big piece of it too. You're going to be able to get away with sort of the under fueling like somebody else might. So, but with the training, I think and if having a coach, but you might want to reach out and try to find someone that does have some experience working with individuals, or at least someone that's willing to visit with you a little more often, like a coach that doesn't just provide a cookie cutter plan, but maybe is like, okay, let's touch base weekly. Put it, someone that really wants you like in Training Peaks to put subjective comments. Like I tell my athletes to do, please
yeah.
comment on how you feel. How did this workout go? What's going on? Any niggles, any injuries? Please put in the comments because I see it and I change things based off of what I see there. Like I make adjustments because I don't want to overdo it. Or if you have a little knee issue, I don't want to then send you out the next day on a long run and you're like exacerbating it because I didn't know, So it's just things like that with someone with Hashimoto's. It might be more of that communication, like you're saying, and a good coach would be able to hopefully you know, be able to adjust it because you have 3 days in a row that you're like, I'm just exhausted. Okay,
Yeah.
let's, like 2 days, by the third day, okay, something's going on, right? Like, so just that kind of that, I think it's so individual too. Like I don't know if there's again, like one specific, like, oh, this is how you would create a training plan for somebody with this condition. It's just more like you might need a little bit more of that interaction with the coach and that kind of being able to maybe look at metrics. You might have to, I think utilizing those to your advantage. And
Yeah.
for people that don't like to be attached to tech, you're then really going to have to dig into your subjective feelings and make sure, you have to rely on that a whole lot more. But that's my suggestion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I
Another
had a specific
another
one.
question that I've got for you is that Hashimoto's is specific to the body attacking the thyroid. We all know that underactive thyroids can lead to difficulties in weight management. So as a dietitian, how would you approach somebody who comes to you who is interested in endurance sports, whether that be training for a half marathon, full marathon, multi-sport, or what have you, and they come to you and say, okay, I need to know how to fuel. So you have the fueling as an endurance athlete, but then you have the fueling as an endurance athlete with Hashimoto's, with something that may impact the body's ability to manage weight.
Yeah,
How do
that's true.
you come up
That's a good
with
question.
an approach for this athlete to help them
Yeah, that's a good question.
in
I
their
think
training?
for them, it's probably more because you don't want to underfuel. I mean, a lot of people with Hashimoto's do have weight gain, and so sometimes they're coming in like, "Oh, I'm gaining weight," and so it is a tricky one because you don't want to be like, "Oh, I'm gonna like," you might have to have some level of like eating a little bit less to lose weight, but I think for that person, it's more of like like we really have to kind of dial it in, like, and just like most people, we don't want to be like trying to lose weight. We might have to spend a specific amount of time if they want to lose weight, like losing weight before we then add the stress of training. So like it's just like almost every athlete, I don't recommend trying to train and lose weight. So if they're coming to me and they're like, I want to train not necessarily to lose weight, but I'm worried about gaining weight because of this, then it is a little bit of that, like maybe we're paying more attention to making sure we're kind of adjusting their intake accordingly, fueling around the workout, but just making sure they're not, overeating, or what we have to maybe monitor weight a little more frequently and things like that. But I don't think it'd be very much different. The only time in which that people tend to gain weight because of it is when they're hypo, when they're actually in that hypo state, when they're undiagnosed, and they have gained a bunch of weight and they haven't realized they have Hashimoto's yet. Usually once it's managed well, weight gain isn't so much of the concern, if that makes sense. Because once their thyroid levels are managed, that's not gonna, hopefully that's not what's causing the weight gain, if that makes, because that's the reason. If your levels are low, your thyroid hormones aren't adequate, then that kind of is the whole metabolism slow down a bit, right? Then you kind of gain the weight. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it, because hopefully your levels are being managed by your physician. Your medications are being managed by the physician. You're checking your levels. And if they're normal and good and you feel good, you don't really need to worry about weight gain. But if you have had weight gain and now you're getting back into it, I think just like everyone else, you're going to have to spend a period of time losing weight before you want to do intense training. So it wouldn't be too much different, I don't think, than the non-Hashimoto's person. Yeah. Unfortunately, I do have to kind of head out soon, but if we have a few more questions, yeah.
No, I think that's good.
I think we have I think what we want, we didn't mention this in the beginning, but what we would love, or maybe we did, but I just want to reiterate this, that if there is somebody out there that knows a endocrinologist, so we have to be very careful, not like just somebody off the internet that doesn't have a medical degree, or like MD, or a maybe PhD even, that researches in this area, that works with athletes, just somebody who has an extensive amount of medical background and maybe works with athletes that you think, or they're listening, or that you know of somebody like that who you think would be good to talk more about the medical side, or even just autoimmune diseases in general, and how that might fit with, considerations for exercise and that kind of combo. I think that's probably hard to find. That's probably a very niche thing. But if anyone knows anyone like that, please let us know. We would love to reach out to them and see if they would be willing to come on the podcast and talk to us, because that's, I think, would be really fascinating to kind of talk more about maybe considerations with, medication or other things that may be diving deeper into, what might be going on in the body specifically, and how maybe even the thyroid hormones affect different organs. And I don't know, it could be fascinating, right? So I would love that, because I feel like that's something that I would have to do a ton of digging into and research. And if we could just have an expert, it would be a lot easier. So that's my final thing. If anyone knows anybody like that, please let us know. And I'll try to scour the internet a little bit, see if I can find anyone, but it's hard. This is such a niche thing, so sometimes hard to find that expertise. But
all right, so I think we're going to wrap this thing up here.
Wrap it up. Hopefully my story was helpful. And
Thank you, Katie, for sharing. I know sometimes sharing stories like this, and kind of like our background, can be a little vulnerable, and sometimes it can be challenging, but just wanted to thank you for being so open about it. So this was, did I say it? I don't know if I said this at the beginning of the episode, so I think,
but it's
I think this is number 31.
Corner.
Yeah, so this is a Coach's Corner episode, but this is episode 31 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Again, if you are enjoying the content, please leave us a review and a comment on wherever it is that you're listening to your episodes. That would be highly appreciated. For all things coaching, if you want to reach out to Coach Katie, you can go to fuel2run.com. If you want to reach out to me, Coach Justin, you can go to tabularasaracing.com for all things coaching related, or diet or dietetics. If you're interested in working with a nutrition coach, you can reach out to Katie. I think that's about it. One last little shout out, and this goes to Theo, who today is Theo's birthday. So he is 6 years old.
This is my little son. This is my son.
So I want to take a moment to wish Theo a very happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah.
Carving pumpkins, eating cake, and doing all kinds of great stuff.
Later. That's why it's 7 in the morning. Or it was around 7 in the morning.
Yeah, so we're recording really early, relatively early.
Well, for you, not for me. It was a little earlier than usual.
So happy birthday, Theo. We hope that you have a fantastic day and a great 6th year of life. So, all right.
Yes, hopefully. He's doing
So
great.
again, thank you guys for joining us on the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin, along with Coach Katie. Thank you very much, and we look forward to talking with you again soon. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye.
Katie. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye. Listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to leave us up to a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify, because leaving a review really helps others like you find us. Visit the podcast website for other episodes of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast at enduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Send Coach Justin and Katie an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.